Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and X. You can also watch and listen to full episodes on Spotify and YouTube. We'll recap what happened this past week in the college football season in Week 8. We'll also preview Billy Napier being out at Florida, who are some potential candidates to replace him, who are some other coaches on the hot seat, what's to come of the 2025 season going forward in the second half, as we're kind of past the halfway mark at this point. And then we'll also get a little bit outside of college football in the world of candy. Start Bench Cut Candy Edition is here. Stay tuned for that. So let's go give a little bit of a recap, a little bit of a dive into what happened this past week in Week 8. Ohio State gets the dominant win over Wisconsin, and Ohio State showing why they're the best team in the country. Indiana's right behind them, but they're looking pretty good so far in Wisconsin. Are they going to fire Luke Fickell? We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Indiana handles business against Michigan State. Texas A&M in a close shootout with Arkansas. Bobby Petrino, the interim head coach for the Razorbacks. And I hate to say this, but the interim tag might be coming away for Bobby Petrino. And that is shocking if you know his whole tenure as a head coach, all the way back at Louisville. The first time did really well, then went to the NFL, then went to Arkansas, had some success, but then got in a little trouble, and then struggled at Louisville, but had some pretty good years with Lamar Jackson. But once he left, it was a dumpster fire. And yeah, but the interim tag might be going away because he's having a coup down there in Fayetteville. Georgia gets the win over Ole Miss. Ole Miss loses their first game of the season, and Georgia looks like they're kind of finding their footing, I should say, and they're trying to fight for a spot in Atlanta. Arizona State gets the upset win over Texas Tech, and the Big 12 is looking like a one-bid league, guys. It's looking like a one-bid league. Who's going to come out of the Big 12? Is it going to be Texas Tech? Is it Utah? Is it Cincinnati? Arizona State? Who knows? But I think you're a one-bid league. Sorry. Not sorry, though. Oregon gets the dominant win over Rutgers. Vanderbilt gets the win over LSU. Diego Pavia played really well. LSU struggling once again, loses another game in a row. Brian Kelly is on a scorching hot seat, guys. And while I never thought it was really a fit for him to be down in Baton Rouge, but yikes, it's just something's not clicking there. Something is not clicking, especially since a lot of people thought that this was the year for LSU. Just like Nussmeier, he's struggled this year. Yeah. So there's that. Georgia Tech gets the win over Duke, and it's starting to look like Georgia Tech is moving in a spot where they're going to secure a spot in Charlotte. You know, that was the big game that they needed to get out of the way in Duke. They're looking really good right now. Who's going to be the second team in the ACC? Now, they still got to earn it themselves. They can't lose any games down the stretch, but it's looking good for the Yellow Jackets so far. Notre Dame gets the win over USC. Elements played a little bit in their favor up in South Bend, but I mean, at this point, Notre Dame's going to make the playoff, guys, whether you like it or not. You know, at 10-2, pretty much every year, Notre Dame, unless they lose to two group of six teams or FCS combo of that nature, they're going to make the playoff. That just is what it is. You know, they lost to Miami, they lost to Texas A&M. They didn't look great in either one of those games, but I think they've kind of found their place and their spot. They're probably going to make the playoff. And we'll see once we get the official college football playoff rankings in early November. But they're probably going to make the playoffs. Oklahoma gets the win over South Carolina. BYU gets the win against Utah in the Holy War. Missouri squeaks out a win against Auburn in overtime. And Auburn's offense is not doing it for them, especially this is surprising, especially since Hugh Freeze is an offensive-minded coach, but he just cannot find a quarterback to work for them. Jackson Arnold does not look great, man. He's just not it. Kind of a miss there. Virginia gets the win over Wazoo. Close game, probably closer than a lot of people were thinking, but Virginia's still looking good in the ACC race. Louisville faithful hoping that they lose a game or two so they can move into that Charlotte position, especially after their big win against Miami. What else? Texas squeaks out a win against Kentucky. And yes, it is a little bit tougher when you're in the SEC. You face all these great teams, but Kentucky is not one of those great teams. I'm sorry. They are not one of those great teams. They are definitely in the cellar of the SEC. Just not a great team. And Arch Manning looked outplayed by Connor Boley from UK. Yikes. And a lot of people are calling for the play calling, but I think there's only so much you can do with play calling with how bad the offensive line has been doing and what Arch Manning hasn't been able to produce. It's tough. It really is tough. And yeah, I don't think Texas is making the playoff. I'm sorry. I just don't think they're going to do it. Not seeing it. Not seeing it at all. UAB gets the upset win over Memphis. That's going to be a pretty big implication for the group of 6 playoff spot. And then Cincinnati, dominant win over Oklahoma State. Not a lot of people talking about Cincinnati. Ranked 24th this past week, but they're hanging in there. Scott Satterfield and company, and Brendan Sorsby, doing a great job up in the Queen City. And but yeah, that's what I got for the week 8 recap. Sunbelt Billy out as head coach of the University of Florida. Billy Gonzalez is in as the interim coach, and he's a familiar coach. He's been with the program, actually played under Urban Meyer at Colorado State as a wide receiver, then followed him to Bowling Green as a coach, Utah, Florida, when they won when they won their 2 national championships. Then kind of bounced around a couple places, then went to Mississippi State under Dan Mullen, then followed him back to Gainesville for a second tenure, then went to FAU for a year, and then came back in 2023 for his third tenure under Billy Napier. And it sucks for Billy Napier because he was a really good recruiter, did really well recruiting high school recruits, but he should have gave up play calling duties. He should never have been the play caller. It just never felt like it was his strength. And now maybe he's great at coaching quarterbacks, but it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. And now Florida, you got some candidates. They're not going for a group of 6 coach, a head coach, I should say. Or they're not even going for a coordinator. They're going for a proven head coach. And, while most successful coaches in college football are coordinators, you got to look at Kirby Smart. You got to look at Dan Lanning. Those are guys who both started as coordinators. Kurt Cignetti started out, he was assistant under Nick Saban and then came from JMU, group of 5 head coach once again. So sometimes you got to take those risks, but Florida Florida's not going to take that risk. They're not going to. Lane Kiffin's the number 1 option. I think he's the best option that they should go for, kind of a Steve Spurrier-esque coach, and the Gator community wants offense. They want an offense that can score a lot of points. That's their brand. That's what they want to do. And Lane Kiffin can do that. So that's why they want him. But the main question is now, is Lane Kiffin going to go to Gainesville? Does he feel comfortable in Oxford? I think personally that you have a better chance to win a national championship at the University of Florida. But the gap's getting smaller with Ole Miss, especially in this changing landscape in college football with NIL and other factors that maybe with the expanded playoff. It's the gap is closing. The gap is closing. But does Lane Kiffin think he has a better shot in Gainesville? I think he ultimately will take the job. That's my kind of prediction. But some other options that they could go after, they can go after Eli Drinkwitz. They can go after James Franklin. I don't think James Franklin is what a lot of the fans want down in Gainesville, just because he hasn't won any big games while he was at Penn State. And while that's true, and especially since you're going to have bigger games in the SEC, that's a very valid point. But I mean, he's a pretty great coach. And are you really going to say no to James Franklin, especially if Lane Kiffin says no? Who else are you going to get at that point? Options are pretty bare at that point. But I think they're going to go with Lane Kiffin. I think that's who they're going to hire. I think that's going to be the decision at the end of the day. But you're the University of Florida. You might as well call people who even you don't think have a shot, like Marcus Freeman. You might as well give them a call. Some other coaches that could be on the hot seat, or I think are on the hot seat. Hugh Freeze, as I mentioned earlier, offense hasn't been playing as well as what we kind of expected from them. Hasn't been able to develop any of the quarterbacks. And, they had a close game against Georgia. Didn't come out with a win. Somehow found out a way to lose that game. Somehow found a way to lose to Missouri. Eventually, those games add up. He was kind of hoping to have support from the athletic director. Didn't quite get that. Said it would be nice if you had that support, but is what it is. Mike Norvell, a lot of people thought this past Sunday that he was going to get fired, and then he doesn't. But I think that's a decision that's probably going to be made at the end of the season. I don't think he's going to be the head coach in 2026, guys. And, I think it has something to do with, he's a great motivator and he gives these great rah-rah speeches. But when those rah-rah speeches go sideways because you're not producing results, I think players start to tune that out. And I think that's exactly what's happening in Tallahassee. I don't think they're taking him seriously anymore. And whenever they have these big teams and these big expectations, and then you get upset, they just spiral out of control. We saw it last year when they only won 2 games. And Yeah, it's just unfortunate. Ever since that game, ever since winning the ACC championship in Charlotte, they have just fallen off a cliff. But yeah, Luke Fickell, he's also on the hot seat up in Wisconsin. I mean, there's just no identity for that Badger program anymore. You know, for a long, long time, they were known as that old school pro style offense, have those hogs on the offensive line, keep players in state, and run the football. Run the football. Like that's what their brand was. And they've gone so far away from that in the Luke Fickell era. There's no identity for this team. And no one's happy. Everyone's upset in Madison. I don't think he's going to make it through the year, but I'm surprised he hasn't been fired at this point. So maybe they don't have the funding. I don't know the situation quite as well compared to other schools, but yeah, I feel like they just need to find someone who fits more of their brand, more of that old school. But is what it is. You know, I don't know if anyone was really anticipating this from Luke Fickell, especially how he did at Cincinnati and his track record at Ohio State as an assistant coach. It's tough. It's tough. But those are some of the coaches that are on the hot seat. So let's take a look at how the second half of the season is going to look out. So in the Big Ten, I think, and honestly, all of college football, I think Indiana, Ohio State, they have locked a spot in the playoff at this point. I mean, barring that crazy stuff happens, like they're in the playoff, guys. You know, even Indiana, like Indiana hasn't shown us anything otherwise to say that they're not going to make the playoff. I mean, let's be real. They're on a collision course to in the Big Ten title. It's going to be those two. It's going to be those two. You know, maybe a couple games here and there, but like maybe Oregon finds a way how to, if Indiana loses a couple games or Ohio State loses a couple games, but like even if they don't make the Big Ten title, they're still going to make the playoff. I even think, actually, a great example of this is the ACC. With Miami losing to Louisville, there's a scenario in which Georgia Tech and Virginia go to the ACC championship game, or Georgia Tech and Louisville, because of how tiebreakers play out, that Miami goes 11-1 and doesn't make the ACC championship, but they're probably going to make the playoff. In fact, that's probably the only way that that two teams from the ACC make the college football playoff. Kind of crazy, but that's probably how that's going to play out, especially how the college football playoff committee favors the SEC and even some of the Big Ten teams, for a matter of fact. The Heisman race, how does that look here now that we're in the second half? Has anyone kind of stood out the test? I think it's Fernando Mendoza and it's Ty Simpson. Those are the top two. I don't think it's going to be Carson Beck anymore after the performance that he had against Louisville. He's out of the picture. Kind of crazy because I was saying he was the favorite, but I think it's Fernando Mendoza or Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson kind of regrouped after his first game. Now, for Mendoza, is he going to have a bad game? I think it's a matter of, if he doesn't have a bad game, he's probably winning the Heisman, guys. Especially the story with Indiana being the turnaround program under Kurt Cignetti. He's looking really good, and he's looking like a first-round pick. He might even be the number one pick in the 2026 NFL draft. So keep that in mind, guys. Just keep it in mind. Notre Dame, kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, they're going to make the playoff. Even though their schedule is not very good, they're going to make the playoff. They lost to Miami. They lost to Texas A&M. Yes, I get that. But, like, they're ranked 13 right now, guys, in the AP poll. And we'll see how they are in the college football playoff rankings. But, like I said, if you're 10-2 at Notre Dame, you're going to make the playoff unless you lose to two group of 6 schools, or an FCS school, some combo of that nature. Like, it's just how the structure is built. It's how the structure is built. Until they join a conference, that's how it's going to be. But yeah, let's take a look at week 9. Let's take a look at week 9 and some of the games that are going to be good ones and kind of my predictions. So Ole Miss, Oklahoma. That's going to be a great game. It's going to be Ole Miss's defense versus Oklahoma's offense. You know, John Mateer coming off the injury and had 3 interception performance. How is he going to bounce back in this game? Had 3 interceptions against Texas, Are they going to run the ball a lot more against this Ole Miss team? I think Ole Miss is coming out with the victory nonetheless. I think it's going to be a bounce back game after losing to Georgia. But here's the thing that's interesting about this matchup is the loser of this game has to win out if they're going to make the college football playoff. I don't think you're going to win. You're not going to make the playoff at 9-3. At least one of those teams isn't. If Ole Miss goes 9-3, they're not making the playoff. If Oklahoma goes 9-3, they're not making the playoff. South Florida versus Memphis. I think I said Ole Miss was going to win that game. Anyway, sorry. Now to the next matchup. South Florida versus Memphis. I got South Florida. Even though Memphis, how do they respond in the UAB? Maybe they have a little bit of fire after losing that game, have something to prove. I think South Florida is the better team. I just think they are. Bulls with the win there. Illinois versus Washington. Illinois trying to prove why they're the third or fourth best team in the Big Ten, but alongside USC, but they're facing a Washington team that is really good, guys. Like, even though they lost to Ohio State and Michigan, they're a good team. Don't sleep on Washington. They're an underrated team. I still got Illinois. I think they're going to come out with the win there. Alabama versus South Carolina. I think Alabama's going to dominate against South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina is very that good. Is Shane Beamer going to reset the clock at Virginia Tech? I doubt it, but there's always a potential there with, Frank Beamer being a legendary coach there, Shane being his son. Maybe they go back to Blacksburg. Who knows? Missouri versus Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's going to get the win over Missouri, although Missouri, they're a competitive team as well, and they have a shot to go to Atlanta, but they have I just think their home slate has just been such a favor to them, and I just like Vanderbilt better. I think they're just that blue-collar team. Clark Lee has done a fantastic job. Drinkwitz has done a great job at Missouri too, but I'm rolling with Vanderbilt. Miami versus Stanford. Canes fans, you better hope that you win against Stanford. Even though Stanford, they beat some teams that had high expectations, but ended up not having expectations. So is Miami in that boat? I think the Hurricanes are going to get a win. But Texas A&M and LSU. Is LSU going to lose another game? Are they going to keep the streak going with this losing streak? I think so. I think A&M is going to beat them. I like Marcel Reed. I like what Elko's doing. And Ruben Owens is a really great running back also for A&M as well. Michigan versus Michigan State. I got Michigan. I think Michigan State's one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and their defense is atrocious. Colorado versus Utah. I'm going with the Utes. Deion Sanders, his future a little bit in question because of his health. We'll see how that all plays out down the line. But those are my Week 9 predictions. Now, going outside of the college football world, the NBA is back, and what a way to start. Oklahoma City and Houston, a great game Tuesday night. Double OT, Thunder come out with the win after they raised the banner, their championship banner from 2025. And I don't know why, this NBA season just feels a little bit special, especially since how we saw that game start. We're in for a good 2025-2026 season. And the Thunder have a really good shot to repeat. Second youngest team in NBA history, I think, behind one of the Michael Jordan Bulls teams. They have a really good shot, I think, since the Warriors to repeat. And I'm talking about the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry Warriors have a really good shot to repeat this year. But the Western Conference is way too stacked compared to the Eastern Conference. That's just my personal take on it. Wish it was a little bit more balanced. But NBA on NBC. Welcome back. Great start. Had a couple mic issues, but the broadcast was great. I enjoyed it. Great to hear Mike Tirico, one of my favorite broadcasters. And a lot of NBA Hall of Famers on that crew. Holy cow. Anyway. Now let's get a little spooky. We're in the spooky season. Spooky, scary skeletons. Let's talk candy. Start Bench Cut Candy Edition. You heard it last week. We're going into it today. We kind of have them categorized into different candy types. So without further ado, chocolate classics. We're going to start Bench Cut. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, Snickers, or Milky Way. I'm starting Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies. I like Snickers. I especially like it like frozen or the ice cream Snicker bars. But yeah, I like Snickers. Maybe a controversial take here, but I'm benching Milky Way. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me because I'm cutting Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, but I'm not a huge peanut butter guy. I don't mind it. I'll eat it. I don't hate it by any means, but I like Milky Way a little bit better. Milky Way's a little bit underrated. It's kind of similar to Snickers, but just doesn't have the peanuts. And is a little bit more fluffier. So that's what I'm going with. Fruity Chews, I got Starburst, Skittles, or Laffy Taffy. I'm starting Skittles, I'm benching Starburst, and I'm cutting Laffy Taffy. Laffy Taffy, that's an easy cut. Skittles or Starburst, you can kind of be interchangeable. I'm not a huge fruity candy guy, but, I like Skittles. They've kind of grown on me. Next up, Minty Fresh, York Peppermint Patties, Andy's Mints, and Junior Mints. I'm starting Junior Mints. I love Junior Mints. That's my go-to candy at the movie theater. Bench York Peppermint Patties. They're pretty decent, but Junior Mints are just better. And Andy's Mints, I'm cutting that. I don't think I've ever had Andy's Mints. I don't even know what that is. So I feel like I have to cut it. Next up, we got the Gummy Squad. Got Haribo Gold Bears Gummy Bears. Try saying that 10 times. Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish. I think in that row, I'm just going to go the Gummy Bears 1, Sour Patch Kids to Sour Patch Kids bench, and Swedish Fish, you're cut. Hard Candy Hall of Fame. We got Jolly Ranchers, Werther's Original, and Lifesavers. I'm going Lifesavers number 1. Maybe that's a hot take. Jolly Ranchers are good, but I think Lifesavers is a little bit more up my alley. Jolly Ranchers is benched, but they can be close. Maybe we switch them out in a matchup. You see how it is there. Maybe they get the start. But Werther's Original, that had no shot. So that's the cut. Spicy and sour, we got Warheads, Hot Tamales, and Toxic Waste. Number 1, I'm going Hot Tamales. I like the little cinnamon kick to it. Warheads, that's a pretty good bench. Toxic Waste, I don't even know what that is, to be honest. Probably sure, if I saw it, I probably know what it is, but that's the cut. Cookie-inspired candy, we got Twix bars, Kit Kat, and Crunch Bar. I'm cutting Crunch. I'm benching Kit Kat, and I'm starting Twix. Maybe that's a hot take, too. A lot of people like Kit Kat. It doesn't matter if it's right Twix or left Twix. I'm going Twix. I'm starting Twix. I like Twix. The Twix. And then we got salty sweet combo. That's our last candy to go through. Take 5, Payday, and Baby Ruth. In my opinion, they're all cuts. I'm gonna be real. They're all cuts. But we'll start Take 5. We'll bench Baby Ruth, and we're cutting Payday. Yeah, no, not doing that. But there's our Start Bench Cut Candy edition. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Tyler Bright and Early Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Bright. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, X, and Instagram. And you can watch and listen to full episodes on Spotify and YouTube. So that's going to do it for today's episode. PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football center.